Okay, just a warning, this is going to be very different. I'm not actually pro-Russia. I'm trying to think like Russia for the sake of illustration, but this is just a caveat. I'm all in for Ukraine. Privyet mi druzy. Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I am a professor who's been going over what's been happening day by day in the war in Ukraine, and I hope to help you understand from the headlines what's going on a little bit more clearly. So today I want to try something a little bit different. Usually I just look at the headlines and I try to unpack the headlines and help you see behind them. Today I'm going to ask a different question, and it hit me this morning when I was in the shower. I thought, this would be an interesting angle. What would I do if I was Russia? Now, I want to preface this by saying I'm all in on Ukraine. I've been supporting them. I wrote a book about Zelensky. Everything about me supports Ukraine, but I'm going to try to look through a Russian lens and see from today's headlines what I should be doing, given everything that we know up to today and using today's headlines. So I want to start here with the Daily Mail article that I was looking at yesterday. I never actually got to this passage. I was looking at the bit about Boris Johnson saying that Putin threatened him, but I didn't actually scroll down a little bit further. It said this: Mr. Johnson reveals that he agreed to step up the military support for Ukraine in June 2021 after receiving a secret letter from Defense Secretary Ben Wallace outlining the looming Russian threat. Mr. Wallace said he flew to Moscow shortly before the outbreak of the war talks with his opposite number, Sergei Shoigu, and Army General Valery Gerasimov, who now in overall command of Russia's war effort. He said, "I remember saying to Minister Shoigu, they'll fight." And they said, "My mother is Ukrainian. They won't." He also said he had no intention of invading at the time, just before the war broke out. I remember as we were walking out, General Gerasimov, the guy that's now in charge, said, "Never again will we be humiliated. We used to be the fourth army in the world. We're now number two. It's now America and us." And there in that minute was a sense of potentially why they were doing this. Okay, so there's multiple theories about why the Russians actually went to war. They want the minerals in Donbass. They want to close off Crimea. They want to support their only base in the Black Sea. They want this. They want that. They want the other thing. Look, you heard it kind of from a horse's mouth. General Gerasimov saying, "Never again will we be humiliated. We're now the number two army in the world. It's America and us." So they really think that they're that big and bad. So now, if I think that I'm this big and bad and I'm the Russians, here's what I'm going to do. Let's use that as a springboard to jump off. I'm going to look at what's going on the ground. Here is the Russians. Russia launches a fresh strikes in eastern Ukraine, and fighting at Voldahar rages on. Okay, it's a realistic possibility that Russia will continue to make local gains in the sector. I'm going to make all the local gains that I possibly can right now if I'm Russia. In fact, I'm going to kind of create a bait and switch strategy. I'm going to take all my sick, lame, and lazy. I'm going to put them around Bakhmut and withdraw all the fresh, useful troops that I can. Why? Because I know that there's lots of Ukrainian soldiers in and around defending Bakhmut. They're not trying to come after me across the fields. They're just trying to defend the city. So I want them to be seen as a lot of soldiers there, as drones are in the air. And I want to take those other troops and I want to attack at other useless points just to create points of contact all along the border, the 500, 700, however many kilometer border that we share with the Ukrainian army. I want to do that intentionally to draw them out, hit places where they never even thought that we were interested in hitting, where they're not dug in. That's what I want to do with the soldiers that I have. Now, the British are saying this in their intelligence update. In the last 3 days, Russia's likely developed its probing attacks around the towns of Pakliva and Voldahar in a more concerted assault. I don't want to just stay there. I want to be about a half dozen different cities simultaneously attacking so that it keeps them off balance. Bring them away from Bakhmut. Bring them somewhere else. They said the settlements lie 50 miles south of west of Donetsk city, and Russia previously used the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade in an unsuccessful assault at the same time. Stop throwing good money after bad, going after these dug-in fortifications. Find soft spots and just attack there. It doesn't matter the military value. The propaganda value will be huge back in Russia. I would also, it goes on to say, Russian commanders are likely aiming at developing a new axis of advance into Ukrainian-held Donetsk Oblast to divert Ukrainian forces from the heavily contested Bakhmut sector. Right. Find other places, soft underbellies that they're not even thinking of, because it doesn't make logical sense. We have plenty of troops. Throw them into the battle now. The ISW says this: the Western Ukrainian and Russian sources continue to indicate that Russia is preparing for an imminent offensive, supporting ISW's assessment that an offensive in the coming months is the most likely course of action. So if they know that we're coming in months, we need to be there in weeks, if not days, in hitting in various places. And it doesn't matter exactly where you're hitting, as long as you're hitting and it's diverting the enemy. That's what you need to do, because right now the Allies have been dragging their feet. Look, Germany, defiant that lockstep with the U.S. on weapons is the best for Ukraine. That's right. They're going to go slowly, but the things are coming. The longer this goes on, the worse it is for Russia, right? So we want to go as quickly as we can. We want to press the fight before tanks get to battlefield. The more Ukrainians you can take off the battlefield, the more land you can capture, the harder it's going to be to dislodge. You want to do this now before tanks get there, right? You have drones, 100 DJI Mavic drones on the ground forces, the armed forces of Ukraine. They've come to Voldahar. Why? They were supported by the Steel Front Initiative of the Metvestment Group. So they now have all these drones. They can see where they are. They need to see bodies around the battlefield. That's why you put the sick, lame, and lazy somewhere around there, and then you withdraw all the fresh troops you can, because you're not actually going to try to take Bakhmut in earnest. You're going to try to spread it out, spread the line thin, so that you weaken the Ukrainian forces. The Ukrainians need to be kept off balance, not knowing where we'll hit. They should be scratching their head going, why would they attack that city? What kind of plan do they have where they're attacking that city? Now, we also need to be thinking about the coalition partners, because if you can splinter the coalition, we can get a lot more traction. So, President Emmanuel Macron has said that France does not exclude sending fighter jets. Well, Joe Biden said fighter jets are off the table, or at least F-16s are off the table. Norway is sending part of its German-made Leopard 2 battle tanks to Ukraine as soon as possible. When? Possibly by late March. Late March. That means we have a closing window. It's now the end of January. We have all of February in order to press our attack, but we have to do it now. Meanwhile, Croatia's president criticized Western nations for supplying Ukraine with heavy tanks. Croatia is Russia's friend. Orban in Hungary is Russia's friend. If we can get one other splinter off, if we can get Schultz to be weak, if we can get Macron to be weak, we can actually make a dent into what's going on in Europe and kind of fracture the coalition. And that's really what we need to be doing on the political front. Forget about Africa, forget about South America. I mean, it's nice to have Brazil taking up for us, but that's not really what's important. Fracture NATO. France and Australia have agreed to cooperate to manufacture several thousand 155M shells to help Ukraine. That's not a good sign. More bad is coming the more time goes on. Tanks provided by the United Kingdom to Ukraine will be on the front line before the summer again. And that's what he said here. Ben Wallace is saying, we'll get those tanks. Now, this is only a company, but the point still stands. If they're saying it's going to be there by the summer, it'll be probably towards Easter. Okay, we know what our window is, and our window's closing to make as much damage as possible. Stop sending cruise missiles to attack civilians in the city. Throw those cruise missiles at Bakhmut, at actual soldiers, to make it look like we're really intent on getting Bakhmut while we start attacking on other places across the line. These Bradleys have just left North Charleston, South Carolina last week, and they're on the way. That's going to be menacing soon enough. We want to start taking ground before they get here as quickly as possible. The Croatian president has commented about, Crimea is really Russia. He's in our pocket. So is Orban. We need more like him in order to make it difficult for NATO and EU partners to actually coalesce, because as they hold together, it makes it difficult for us. Last thing, Brazil makes a proposal on Ukrainian peace talks. The more that we can move now, the faster that we can gain ground right now, the better our chances later on in peace talks to actually retain part of Ukraine, to actually retain East Ukraine. So that's what we would need to do. If I was Russia, that's what I would say. Do now. Throw everything that you had before tanks get there. Doesn't matter the human cost, because remember, we don't have that moral sensibility. Throw everything that we have at it right now. In fact, threaten to attack Kyiv as a feint so that we take soldiers away. Threaten other places that don't even necessarily make sense but are weak spots so that we can take more ground. Now, I know that that's a very weird way to approach the day's news, but I think this is what the Russians have to start thinking of, because the longer time goes on, the worse this gets for them. I know that you can look at it the other way and think the longer this goes on, the worse it is for Ukraine. And it is. More damaged buildings, more ruined lives, more death and destruction. But the longer it goes on, the harder it is for Russia, because Ukraine is going from strength to strength. They're getting tanks, they're getting Bradleys, they're going to be getting longer range armaments. Russia has two choices. They can either try to take ground now, or they can simply hold and defend. Now, holding and defending is going to be a long fought war as well, but they're not going, if they choose a defense line right now, they're not going to get much beyond that defense line. And I don't think that they're going to be able to concentrate en masse and be able to be successful the longer they take to do it, once Bradleys arrive and tanks arrive and other things that join the fight. So if I was Russia, I'd be doing everything I could right now. Mercifully, I'm not Russia, and as distasteful as this was, I don't have to do this again to pretend that I'm on that side and try to think that way. But wow, they're really in a world of hurt. This does not mean that the war is going to end soon. And let me give that as a caveat. I don't think that this means that this is their last gasp. I think what Russia's actually going to do is put up a defensive line and just try to stay and hold all that defensive line and go for a war of attrition. And I think we'll be in this fight, unfortunately, this time next year. I hope that I am absolutely wrong about that. I pray that I'm wrong about that, but I think it's going to go on for a long time. All right, my friends, thank you for giving me your time and attention today. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you will be too.